Next week we should talk about this. I think it works. Hi, everybody. We're live Fridays with Sue and Steph. And, we've gotten used to this like Zoom platform. And even though we're going to go get together after this, I think it's going to stick that we do our Fridays with Sue and Steph this way, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But it does feel like we each encompass a space together, a separate space together. It's kind of weird. All right. So here's what we thought we would talk about. As time goes on, people understand more or differently. That may be debunked later, but I can look back at my parenting and recognize certain things that I bought into that I would never do again. So I have a bunch of examples, like way too many of things I would do differently. But I'm going to start with, this was driven by what was happening at the time with my oldest kid. Now, Dan and I are both really stubborn. And if you think about two like character traits coming together and amplifying, we have 5 kids who are really stubborn. So at my oldest kid, the rule of parenting at the time for a toddler was to give a timeout. And that meant, I don't know if people still do it today, but I would say don't.
Funny. I was just thinking that. I don't know.
Yeah, but it meant that like when something wasn't working, I would say, okay, you need to go into your timeout chair or go sit on the steps for a timeout. The word was timeout. And of course you would never do it. And so we would end up in a battle of wills over the stupid timeout and never actually address what hadn't worked prior to that. So we could have like a full-blown day about the timeout because I wasn't going to back down and she wasn't going to back down. And we could be arguing so hard about that timeout, which is like—
I remember what you're arguing about.
Never addressed it. Anyway, so that's where it starts for me as a parent. And then it continues to adolescence where I look back and think what I know now, and I'm sure what we've learned together, we just wouldn't approach it the same way. So what's your thing, Steph?
Yeah, my thing is, and this relates to siblings, is I eventually learned to extricate myself, but it took many, many years. I would have done it way sooner. Way sooner. And yeah, maybe this is all of parenting. It's like, man, if you could look forward and see how things might turn out, not even
in the crystal ball. Who doesn't want the crystal ball?
Because you would be like, I wouldn't have to go so busy trying to get those values into them and get everything you can't argue. I think I would have just chilled because I saw once I extricated myself, they had to figure it out. I didn't do anything. All I did was I was pouring fuel on the fire, right? Because everybody always thinks you're taking their side, even though you're not taking anyone's side.
So the sibling thing, the sibling thing, I will say that I didn't do this nearly enough, but that book, Siblings Without Rivalry, was
I just looked it in my drawer.
What?
I just came across it in my drawer yesterday looking for my marriage license, which is we'll hold that topic for another time.
Yeah, so that book gave me a tool that really worked, which is, and I remember doing it when my kids were too old to do it, but it was so out of control. And I made them sit down at the table and I said, you have 2 minutes to tell your story, no interruptions. You have 2 minutes to tell your story, no interruptions. And they started, and it was really hard. The other one's like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then the other one's, yeah, but, and I was like, no, these are the rules. Oh, this is cute. Brianna says I would for sure be, I think, quiet more. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. On this, that's funny.
Yeah. But anyway, so I had them each tell their version of the story, and it was done at that point. I had no other role other than they each wanted to let the other one know I'm not the only one wrong here, right? Like, this is not my fault. It's not fair.
Yeah.
So,
so true.
That to me as a sibling thing was this is never going to work, but I'm going to try it because I'm so frustrated.
Oh,
Anyway, so yeah.
Brianna, I used to do that too. Wait, you got to put that up. You got to put that up.
Can you not do it? I have to do it?
I don't think so.
Ah, okay. Read it. You go first.
Okay, this is Brianna. I make my kids write apology notes to one another, and then they have to say 5 things they like each about one another. Oh my God, Brianna, I just came across, I was starting to say that. So not only did I come across the siblings without rivalry, but maybe this is my siblings pile in my drawer. I also came across some of the apology notes yesterday. So
that's fun.
Yeah, which are
That's
super
so fun.
fun. And those are getting saved for like weddings, big events, something that like I'm just going to hand to each kid. I have to decide if I want to hand each kid the ones they wrote or what were written about them. Or you give it to who they're the spouse. I thought that would be so funny. So I've got quite an arsenal going.
Wow, and Brianna makes them hug. Okay, that would so not happen in my house. Everyone holds on
and
to
in
her
public.
Ah, wow. All right, good for you. Okay, so my thing that I did write down way too many things that we're not going to get to today, but I'll pick out the ones that I think really would have changed, like the house. I think I just would have been kinder if I didn't see myself so powerful, like that I could change everyone's dynamic and everyone's like sensitivities or insensitivities. But you get more information and like I really know I'm just not that powerful.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of the burden off of having to like kind of my example for that one is I think it's Dan Siegel who talks about like the kid comes in from school, throws their backpack on the ground super aggressively. You ask them a question and they like ignore you or mumble or like right away, you know, they're mad at you. And he says, just think about what their day was like that brought them to that moment. And it makes me teary to think about like how I could have come at this with like a kindness and a generosity that wasn't like, pick up your book bag now. We do not do this in our house, right? Like this.
Yeah, it's so good, Sue. And the word I wrote down, that's so funny. I think it's the same thing. And it was latitude. I would have given them a little more latitude. And I think it's the kindness thing, right? Where like just realizing just so hard to be them.
And that it's not about me. Like
totally.
They didn't even swear at me because it was about me.
Yeah.
Right. Like underneath that is always they had a crap day at school. No one played nicely with them.
Yeah.
They got a test score back. Whatever it is, it has zero to do with me. And like, so pushing myself into like, you know, I guess it's arrogance to think it's all about you, or I don't know, maybe just not knowledge, but being able to say, okay, these moments, I can be like the love for them that they're not getting somewhere else. Like it, I don't know. I kind of get teary when I think about it.
I know. It's so tender. It's so tender, right?
And if they can't get that from us, like, where are they getting it?
Did I ever tell you this story? I listened to this guy. It was an interview and he had several kids from a first marriage. Kids grew up, got married again, and had kind of what he called his second family and like another chance at it. And he said that he realized with the second family that his job was just to love them. And I was like, wow, but can you get there? Is the only way through it, right? Like, so he had this other experience.
No, I actually think you can get there. And honestly, I think that probably we judge parents who just love their kids. Like, oh my God, do something, right? Like, do something, tell them not to be mean, all these other things that like we think we have a role in. But I want to put Brianna, you are awesome here. You are really great. You have a journal between all the kids. So each of us have a book we write back and forth in each night or whenever. It's a non-judgment zone. You cannot get in trouble for anything you write. Did you hear that from someone or did you make that up? That is so unbelievable. So that goes to, I have another one where I think I would put everybody in therapy. Not because everyone needed therapy, but I think it takes away the stigma of having therapy if it's just part of like what we do. Like you seem like you're having a hard time right now. Why don't we call the therapist and like, you know, schedule a time for you? And one of the things I feel like is that as adults, it would be less of a struggle to say, Like, I'm having a little bump here. How can I get some outside help? Are you frozen?
Having some buffering.
Ah, okay. What's your next one?
What is my next one? I had those two written down. I didn't go that far.
All right. Well, Deborah Fish says, agree on taking away the stigma of therapy. Yeah. And I think for families who did it early, like it just has nothing attached to it other than like kind of calling a friend to say I had a bad day, right? Like it should be just part of, and actually yesterday I interviewed a man who lost a son by suicide, a 14-year-old, and a woman who attempted suicide as a college kid. And it was so powerful. And one of the things that they were both talking about is like this notion of having somebody to talk to. And it might not always be you. Anyway, it was really, it's really good. And next week I'm talking, so they did a movie, which is Tell My Story, because the dad found after the 14-year-old died by suicide, the dad went through his room and found a note that a sticky in a drawer that said, Tell My Story. And so the dad went on this journey and put together this documentary. And anyway, the next Thursday, I'm talking to the psychiatrist who's also in that movie. And it's just, it's like just to make mental health the same priority as we make physical health. That's what the dad said.
It's interesting. I was thinking, well, two things as you were talking about that. One is just how
Brianna's watching the movie tonight. Brianna, I can't wait to hear from you because I was so blown away by it. It really changed the way I think about how we parent. I think it did make me feel softer. Like sometimes we just have to be a real embrace or a virtual embrace, but be with our kids.
It's funny. Last night I fell asleep to a podcast, which my husband would say that's pretty much every night. But
you've mentioned it about 100 times on our discussions.
I have heard the first 3 minutes of pretty much every podcast. It was Bo Burnham, who's a songwriter, and he actually wrote the movie Eighth Grade, which I thought was brilliant. This 30-some-year-old man in the head of a 13-year-old girl. And he was talking, he's had lots of mental health issues. And he was talking last night, and I don't know who the guy was interviewing him, but they were both talking about their struggles. And the guy interviewing him said, I always thought that if I told someone, my parents, a sibling, that I was burdening them and that I was making it worse and I was making it real. He's like, and it's actually just the opposite. When I told someone, I felt so much better, but that's a very hard thing to believe because it's counterintuitive. And he's like, but I'm here to say it is true. They were both talking about how they've experienced it. And the other thing is, so I'm obsessed with the play Dear Evan Hansen. And so, they just filmed it. It's coming out in September. They just released the trailer a few days ago. So all I can say is like, get your tissues for the trailer alone. and I was thinking like, this idea, and I just said it to a friend this morning. We were talking about another friend, and I said something about how doesn't everyone just want to be seen? Like, when I'm talking to somebody, as a 52-year-old, I want to be seen. And it's, as a 10, 12, 20-some-year-old, I want to know that I matter in that conversation and that you're seeing me for who I am. And when we think about our teens, I'm like, oh my God, and things are changing so rapidly. There's no one who wants to probably be seen more than during those years.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the conversation yesterday was really powerful. And I can't wait to talk to the psychiatrist because he seems to really have like first of all, a calming influence, which I always appreciate, but a lot of wisdom. And anyway, so I think that looking back on our lives as parents, could we be that before we tried it differently? I think it's a little bit about what culturally is being told to us. And the story is changing right now because we have such a mental health crisis. I think like all hands are on deck to say, how do we reverse this? And one of the biggest things, like Steph, when we started talking about social media and phones, we were like, who would monitor their kid, right? Like you wouldn't read their diary. And now really, I think a lot of people are changing their tunes
Change.
because we didn't know the weaponizing of these devices and
Very
how,
true.
and these kids are bullied. If your child is being bullied, it's 24/7. We didn't have that. Like we had an experience at school that was maybe horrible, but then you could be involved in an after school program somewhere with a whole different group of kids, and it was loving and nurturing, and come home to a loving and nurturing house and leave that behind. But you can't do that anymore.
Well, yes, and the idea of, our kids are such activists and they're involved in so many things, and it's what you and I talk about this all the time. It's what we love about these teens, and you watch them and you're like, oh my God, they are going to change our world. They are unbelievable. And what comes with that is this whole maybe duality, I don't know, where and I've heard it from my daughter and I've heard it from others, where if you post something, you're part of, I'm sorry, if you don't post something, you're part of the problem. If you post something, they kind of come for you if it's not agreeable to someone.
Well,
and so there's this whole thing. I don't know. I'm paralyzed because I'm going to get it wrong. I know what I do wrong.
I think a really good answer is, I would say get off of social media, but that's not going to happen. But
it can happen for a day or two. It does.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. It's interesting because the woman yesterday, I wish I could remember her name. I'm sorry, but I said something about getting off of social media, and she said, well, I would really say differently. Like, how about Friday we have a 24-hour period in our house where we are tech free. And they did talk about how the parents cannot use their devices either. Like it has to be a whole family decision. But I think it's necessary for us to recharge and give ourselves like just time away.
Recharge without something that has to be plugged in.
Yeah, that's a great line. Did you come up with that line? That's such a good line.
Second.
Wow, really clever. That's a meme. Guys, pay attention. That's going to be a meme by Stephanie Schaefer Silverman.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Anything else, Steph? I don't want to cut you off.
No.
Okay, so if you want to share what you would do differently, I'm going to let Deborah have the final word.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice one. Yeah.
And let's not forget the possibility of how we can be supportive of and influential for our other family members, nieces and nephews, and be there for them in their teen years. Sometimes a little distance from a family friend or aunt or uncle is really helpful. That is such wise words. Thank you. So Deborah Fish and Brianna, I don't know how to say your last name, Ritchie. You really added a lot to our conversation today. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you back here next Friday.
Bye.